ready to be, dog. Whole stadium, whole world counting us out, man.
Go, man.
I'm him.
It's very difficult not to overreact to the Monday Night Football games that we saw tonight, so we're going to do our absolute best, but a lot has gone down that we need to break down. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. And now that we get all that out of the way, break! Mike check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? As I was watching the Tennessee Titans face off against the Buffalo Bills, obviously we have to bring up the Buffalo Bills dominance. I mean, it seems like Josh Allen is literally out there playing Madden on rookie mode. That's how easy he's been making it look recently. And for the first time in his career, not to say that Josh Allen ever had a bad defense, but year after year, as Josh Allen got better as a quarterback, it seems like the Buffalo Bills understood that, hey, I think we understand that Josh Allen could hold his own on the offensive side of the field, so let's make sure that he's covered in terms of defense. And they really did that by going ahead and signing Von Miller this past offseason. And in week one, we really saw that signing pay off in the best way possible. Now this week, the Tennessee Titans didn't have their starting left tackle, Taylor Lewan, and I wanted to make sure that we were all aware of that before we jumped into this analysis. But the Buffalo Bills defense once again looked extremely dominant against a team that had a first round bye in the NFL playoffs last year. Now, how they finished is a completely different story. In the week before, the Buffalo Bills absolutely dominated the defending Super Bowl champions. So this team looks like they're clicking on every single cylinder. And before we go into what the hell is going on with the Tennessee Titans and whether or not we should panic about the Tennessee Titans, it's very important to note that the Buffalo Bills have a damn good defense, and any player or any team that underperforms against that defense can't necessarily be faulted. I honestly don't think I need to say much about their offense that you don't already know. I mean, Josh Allen literally was flawless this game, didn't throw a single interception. Stephon Diggs had 3 touchdowns and 148 receiving yards off of 14 targets. I mean, there's not much more you could ask from the Buffalo Bills offense in terms of a perfect game. So let's focus a little bit on the Tennessee Titans here. Because if you're a Tennessee Titans fan, and I even tweeted this out during the game, if you're a fan of the Tennessee Titans, the question is simple. Is it the Buffalo Bills defense is really good? Or is Ryan Tannehill incredibly trash? Or is it both? In my opinion, I don't think Ryan Tannehill is a horrific QB by any means. I don't think he is the quarterback that will get you to the promised land. I don't necessarily see him hoisting up a Lombardi at any point in his career. Now, if that ends up happening, you could clip this, you could roast me on Twitter, whatever you want, but there's been moments where the Tennessee Titans really needed an elite type of play from Ryan Tannehill. More specifically, I'm thinking about how their season ended last year with Ryan Tannehill throwing a terrifying pick against the Cincinnati Bengals. And once again, I understand Taylor Lewan is out. You trade Ryan Tannehill's best target and his favorite target in AJ Brown over the offseason. You bring in Treylon Burks, who could be the real deal. By the way, he had a fairly solid game. I think his best game as a rookie so far, and he was targeted significantly more than he ever was in any other game. But I understand there's a bunch of things that Ryan Tannehill is trying to become adjusted to and get used to, on top of the fact that he's still recovering from last year's very difficult finish. At the same time, you have to bear in mind, like, imagine if you're Ryan Tannehill, you pretty much throw away your team's most promising season in quite some time, and then in the offseason, your team goes ahead, trades AJ Brown, brings in Treylon Burks, and decides to draft a player that was a first-round talent in Malik Willis in the 3rd round. So obviously he's not feeling so great about himself. And then week 1 happens against the New York Giants, and I don't want to take anything away from the New York Giants because they seem to be a really good team this year. I mean, at least much improved from the year before. And Ryan Tannehill actually had a fairly solid performance in that game against them. He had 2 touchdowns, 266 passing yards, completed 20 out of 33 of his passes. So the biggest indicator to me that Ryan Tannehill isn't falling off the cliff is the fact that he performed fairly well against the New York Giants. When you look at his statistics against the Buffalo Bills, it's horrendous. He completed 11 of 20 of his passes for 117 passing yards. He threw 2 interceptions. He was sacked twice. He had a rating of 32.7. So for the most part, what's the biggest takeaway from this if you're a Tennessee Titans fan? Are you going to look at the Buffalo Bills, a team that you could very well see in the playoffs, and say,
oh, well, it's the Buffalo Bills. They might be the best team in football. Of course, what do we expect?
No. If your quarterback is struggling this mightily against a team that you could potentially see in the playoffs, and bear in mind, the Tennessee Titans are a fairly good team in their own right. In my mind, a team that was able to get a first round bye the year before, went ahead and made some adjustments coming into this season, has playoff hopes in my opinion. Once you get into the playoffs, I think you have a chance at making it into the Super Bowl if things go the right way. But the fact that Ryan Tannehill struggled this much against the Buffalo Bills defense could either mean one of two things. Either he is not the guy, or he is still adjusting to his new weapons. I mean, the only wide receiver that Ryan Tannehill is familiar with from last year until this year is Nick Westbrook-Akine. I mean, Josh Gordon is a brand new receiver. Robert Woods is a brand new receiver. Treylon Burks is a new receiver. Kyle Phillips is a rookie. You guys get my point. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much should you panic if you're a Tennessee Titans fan? I would say maybe like a 3. If this is something that was going down in November or December, I'd be a little bit more concerned. Since it's happening all the way in September and it's week 2, it's something you could look at and potentially adjust and hopefully get better with for the future. And the other game that we need to discuss is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And man, was this an important game for the Philadelphia Eagles, because the Minnesota Vikings are a pretty good opponent and a nice test to determine whether or not the Philadelphia Eagles are the real deal or not. Now, again, I know it's still very early in the season, but for the most part, the one thing that we could get excited about, and if you're an Eagles fan, you could get excited about, is Jalen Hurts is progressing in his development. He's not stagnating. The first time I saw this man take snaps, this isn't to say that he didn't have any type of quarterback ability or any ability to throw the football, but I always viewed him as a run-first type of quarterback that could occasionally make some throws, but wouldn't necessarily wow you in the pocket. This game was completely different. We saw Jalen Hurts improvise. We saw Jalen Hurts make the right reads, the right plays, and he performed so admirably that he completed 26 out of 31 of his passes for 333 yards and had 3 total touchdowns, and of course he threw 1 interception. And bear in mind, coming into this season, we've said this repeatedly, that the success of the Philadelphia Eagles is 100% on Jalen Hurts' shoulders. It's ironic because Jalen Hurts and Tua are pretty much in the same exact situations. They're both still on their rookie scale contracts, and both of their general managers went out and absolutely balled out in the offseason to put a good supporting cast around both teams. And ultimately, both so far, again, really early, but both quarterbacks so far are impressing me. And if this type of play can continue from Jalen Hurts, then I think the Philadelphia Eagles will easily win the NFC East and could potentially go even further. For the Minnesota Vikings, again, this was one of those situations where it was very difficult to determine whether Kirk Cousins was performing horribly or the Philadelphia Eagles was that freaking good. Of course, we saw so many dropped passes, including a for sure touchdown from Irv Smith Jr. earlier on in the game. And whenever that happens, obviously, it's not going to help out anybody. So in that sense, you could say that it wasn't Kirk Cousins' fault. Obviously, it was his offense's fault a little bit. At the same time, the Philadelphia Eagles defense was phenomenal. Darius Slay completely blanketed Justin Jefferson. I mean, I know you're going to look at the stat sheet and say, yo, Mike, but Justin Jefferson still had 6 receptions for 48 yards. That's still pretty freaking good. Considering how this man was targeted 12 times, I'd say that Darius Slay did an A+ job locking down Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins did have 3 interceptions. He threw for 200 passing yards. He had 1 touchdown and a rating of 47.7. Jalen Reagor didn't have much of a revenge game either, unfortunately. I think you can't really panic if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan. Maybe they're still trying to figure things plays out under their brand new head coach, Kevin O'Connell. Whereas if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you definitely have a reason to be optimistic. I mean, A.J. Brown seems to be a home run of a trade. Devontae Smith had a remarkable game with 7 receptions on 80 yards. Dallas Goedert balled out himself as well. And the defense was absolutely cooking all night. I mean, I am in awe of the Philadelphia Eagles defense this year. It wouldn't surprise me if they finished top 5 this season. However, again, it's still early in the season, but the potential is there, and I really like what I've seen so far. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about the Philadelphia Eagles and the Minnesota Vikings. Are you panicking so far, or do you still think it's early on in the season and there's still plenty of time to figure things out? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.